Denmark's ruling Social Democrats are often pointed to as a model for the continent's centre-left parties, with their hardline immigration policies seen as the key to their electoral success. However, things aren't looking so rosy for the Danish government right now, as the three governing parties are way down in the polls and received a drubbing at Denmark's local elections on Tuesday. So in this video, we're going to dive into the results and explain why things are going poorly for the Danish government. We've just released a brand new coffee table book called Assembly Required, which runs through the stories behind some of the world's most beautiful parliament buildings. It's 300 pages long, features hundreds of photos, as well as custom designed floor plans and maps, all alongside the stories of each building written out by our team. Find out more and pick up a copy by clicking the link in the description. Let's start with a quick explainer of some of Denmark's many political parties, for anyone who doesn't regularly keep up with this kind of thing. The current government, formed after the 2022 elections, is made up of three parties. The largest is the Social Democrats, the traditional centre-left party led by Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. Then there's the mainstream centre-right Venstre, and the pretty self-explanatory moderates. This is an unusual government in that it spans across the two blocks that have traditionally organised Danish politics, with a red bloc on the left and a blue bloc on the right. On Tuesday, though, this coalition faced its first real electoral test since taking shape, with local elections held across the country. These are important not just as an electoral test ahead of the general election due next year, but also because Denmark's decentralised public sector means that 75% of public expenditure is channeled through local governments. Unfortunately for the government, things didn't go brilliantly at these elections. While the Social Democrats did remain the largest party, they were also the biggest loser, dropping more than 5 points from 2021 to end up with just 23.2% of the vote, the party's worst result ever. And they lost votes right across the map, in 89 out of 98 municipalities. In the capital, Copenhagen, the Social Democrats look likely to lose the mayoralship for the first time in history. Back in 2021, the Social Democrats had already suffered a historic defeat in the capital, falling second behind the left-wing Red-Green Alliance. But on Tuesday, they fell further to third, having been overtaken by the Green Left too. It wasn't a great night for the other ruling parties either, though. Centre-right Venstre lost more than 3 percentage points. Although, thanks to negotiations and the Social Democrats' bigger decline, Venstre has managed to negotiate a good number of mayoralships, becoming the largest party by mayoral posts. As for the moderates, having only formed a couple of years ago, this was their municipal election debut, but it ended up being a disappointing night, with just 1.3% of the vote and losing the vast majority of the 31 council seats that they previously built up with defections. As for opposition parties, one of the strongest results came from another debut party, the right populist Denmark Democrats, which secured 4.6% of the vote, but was particularly strong in several rural municipalities. Other blue bloc parties did well too, including the Libertarian Liberal Alliance and the far-right Danish People's Party, which, while still being fairly far down on the list, grew 4.1 and 1.8 points respectively. Meanwhile, in the red bloc, it was the Green Left that enjoyed the most growth, coming fourth, having risen 3.5 percentage points. So overall, really not a good night for the governing parties, particularly the Social Democrats, who lost ground to the left in cities and urban areas, while losing ground to the right in more rural areas. National election polling ahead of next year's election paints a similarly poor picture. The three governing parties have all sunk in the polls since the 2022 election, and are now at a combined 34%, according to Politico's poll of polls, compared to the 50% they scored in 2022. Meanwhile, the Green Left has risen to second place on 13%, and parties on the right have also grown, most notably the Liberal Alliance and the Danish People's Party, the latter of which, in recent months, has risen to 9%, triple its 2022 score. So why are things going so poorly for the government? Well, despite the red bloc winning a majority, albeit a slim one in 2022, Mette Frederiksen opted to take her Social Democrats into a cross-bloc coalition with the centre-right Venstre and the moderates, the first centrist coalition in 44 years. Given the pretty steep decline that the Social Democrats and Venstre suffered soon after the election, it's not unreasonable to assume that many voters on both sides of the political spectrum may have been frustrated by this. The significant decline that the moderates have suffered in the past 3 years, and the rise of parties further to the left and right, adds to the idea that maybe Danish voters aren't actually hankering for a government or politics that bridges the political divide. The coalition has introduced a number of contentious measures and reforms that have hurt their approval too. Most notably the scrapping of a public holiday in 2023 in order to boost the defense budget. Some commentators have interpreted Tuesday's results as the Social Democrats being punished by more liberal voters for their hardline immigration policies, and proof that, more generally, left-wing parties shouldn't adopt right-wing immigration policies. For context, unlike most established left-wing parties in Europe, the Danish Social Democrats have pursued a hardline immigration policy since the migrant crisis in 2015. Policies have included reduced welfare benefits, restrictive naturalization rules, and prohibiting immigrants from moving to certain housing areas designated as ghettos. These policies did successfully reduce the number of asylum applications. After a brief spike in 2015, in Denmark asylum applications quickly fell and are now at a 40-year low outside of the pandemic. Conversely, in most other European countries, asylum applications often remained elevated after 2015 and have started rising again after the pandemic. Anyway, these policies were widely credited as the main reason that Denmark didn't experience a far-right surge, and have since become a model to emulate. Keir Starmer's new asylum policies, for instance, are apparently inspired by the Social Democrats. But while immigration probably played some role in the recent swing towards more left-wing parties, it's worth noting that immigration is just not as big an issue in Denmark as it is in other European countries at the moment. And there are lots of other reasons for voters to ditch the Social Democrats. They've failed to get a grip on Denmark's housing crisis, for instance, and often talk down Copenhagen and its urban elites in order to appeal to more rural voters, which obviously won't play well in Copenhagen. Moreover, there's clearly an element of incumbency fatigue at play, given that the Social Democrats have been in power at the national level since 2019. If other struggling establishment parties want to draw any lessons from Tuesday's results, they should probably keep in mind that for all of their recent woes, the Social Democrats have held on to power better than basically any other establishment centre-left party in Europe, and are still technically top of the polls going into the next general election, which is due to take place no later than October next year. When a story like this breaks, though, the headlines aren't just fast, they're fragmented. Depending on where you get your news, you might be seeing a completely different version of the same events. But if we look right now using Ground News, we can see this story on the UK looking at Danish migration policies, and we can see that there are 31 sources currently reporting on it, with most of the coverage coming from the left. If we dive a bit deeper, we can see that the left is framing it as Labour flirting with far-right policies, while the right is framing it as a tough and necessary shake-up. We're able to get such a detailed analysis thanks to our sponsor, Ground News. If you're overwhelmed by the amount of outlets and stories you're seeing online, Ground News has the solution for you, as they expertly collect and merge thousands of articles into one easy-to-access place, finally giving you an effortless way to consume news and digest media bias. And it doesn't even end there. Ground News offers you comprehensive breakdowns into the ownership, bias distribution, and factuality of each article, allowing you to dive even deeper into every story. For example, if you're worried about how much you can trust what's being said about a certain event, with a click of a button you can filter and sort every story by their factuality level, helping you easily grasp the reliability of each outlet. It's not just the stories we see that shape the narrative though, it's the ones that we don't. Ground News' blind spot feed is the only feature that shows you stories being ignored by one side of the political spectrum, helping you to break out of your bubble and spot what you might have missed. To give you an idea, here we can see a story on the UK's Home Secretary saying that children born in the UK to refugees will be deported if their status is revoked, which would have been completely buried if you leaned left, as it's mostly being reported by right-leaning outlets. Ground News doesn't just feed you stories based on your algorithm though, it also allows you to see everything the other side might not want you to. Ultimately, that's why we're partnering with them to give you 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. All you have to do is subscribe through the link in the description, go to ground.news/TLDR or scan the QR code on screen, and you'll be supporting an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.